Mate, it's like a fever dream.
It's
trying to
so
explain
good.
that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And the last round is like you have to fill your trolley up with as much stuff as you can, and the person with the biggest price at the end, the highest price at the end, is the winner.
All right, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the That Makes Sensei Podcast. Stu, what have you got for me today?
This one is all about what your favourite entertainer is. Who is your favourite entertainer?
Yeah, I mean, like, when we say entertainer, that could be, actor, it could be TV host, it could be a musician, it could be a sports star, it could be anything, right? How about yourself? Like, let's kick off with traditional entertainers, film stars, TV stars, that kind of thing. Who do you like, Stu?
I love comedians. Comedians I'm a big fan of, yeah. Any kind of comedian is good, to be honest. Well, no, that's a lie. I like I have some specific comedians that I like throughout my time. Some older, some that my dad liked, that kind of passed down to me. But some things that he liked to watch I also watch, and some newer comedians as well, because I just think they're just very interesting, unique individuals.
I'm well into comedy as well. I think it's probably a thing of our generation as well. Growing up in England, we went through like a pretty golden era of British comedy, where that kind of late 80s to maybe early 2000s, where British comedy, especially like BBC comedy, was really, really amazing. And so many great shows came out in that era. We're talking Young Ones, Red Dwarf, Blackadder, all of these iconic TV shows as British people of our generation love. And I think that kind of comedy actor is really popular. So for me, Rick Mail. We mentioned him a couple of episodes ago on the tattoo podcast.
Rick Mail, yeah.
I've got a Rick Mail tattoo. So yeah, Rick Mail. If you guys don't know who Rick Mail is, he was a British comedian, actor, incredibly funny guy, and he passed away a few years ago now, but absolutely incredible energy, so funny,
iconic
facial expressions off the chart.
He's really iconic, yeah.
Who he is.
He's part of a lot of breakthrough kind of TV shows, isn't he? Like Young Ones, like you mentioned, Bottom, or he was in Blackadder. Even recently he was in
Man Down. It's called. Very anarchic comedy, very slapstick and very, very childish in a way. Kind of prepubescent humor, but what a guy. Like, for me, he is, if there's a Mount Rushmore of like entertainers I like, he'd be like the first two. That's how much I absolutely love Rick Mail. But how about you? What kind of stuff did you like from that generation? Who did you kind of watch when you were growing up?
My dad's from London. I don't know if this has any influence on it, but he really likes Only Fools and Horses, and so when I grew up, I literally have seen everything. I think every episode. So that was good fun for me as I was growing up. And then obviously I was into Red Dwarf. My dad wasn't necessarily into that. I liked Red Dwarf. This is really old. These things are like 90s or 80s TV shows, really. But I was watching these through the 90s alongside Blackadder. So one of my favourite actors is Rowan Atkinson. I've always loved Rowan Atkinson. I just think he's like one of a kind, very unique entertainer.
He certainly is. He's probably more well-known worldwide for Mr. Bean, to be fair. But Blackadder, the first series of Blackadder is really different to the rest.
Yes, completely different, yeah.
It's like completely different. But I think from the second series, they kind of found their stride, and some of the stuff in that show is just unbelievably funny. It's also of a historical thing where there was different periods of historical.
Yeah, it's deep in history, so that's the very interesting thing for me. Like, it's so well made, and it goes with the time of the big events that happened during those times. The way they picked it out is very interesting.
All right, we've both got some comedians we like. What about more mainstream kind of TV stars or movie stars or something like that? Like, who do you kind of like from that world.
So I'm not really a movie guy, a movie buff or anything like that. I'm just a person who enjoys TV shows mostly. But more recently, I've liked Cobra Kai. It's because I love Karate Kid.
Yeah.
So Cobra Kai, so good, and I like the actors and seeing how they have progressed in that episode, in that TV show, since the original movie Karate Kid. And I've watched all 4 Karate Kids as well because I'm a loser. So
Great movies though. Great movies.
yeah, well, they get worse. It's gradually worse as they go, but yeah, they are great movies. Yeah, but there's so much harking back on each one. It goes back to the movies. You know, there's so much that connects. I like that. They've done it really well.
Yeah, it's a pretty good show. I'm like you as well. I don't really watch that many movies. I've got a few movies in my life that I really like, and I'll kind of go back to them, but I'm not that bothered about movies so much. But TV shows, going from the kind of sitcom-y stuff like Blackadder and Red Dwarf or whatever, and now like the modern British comedies, which is more like your panel shows, your faux game shows.
Game shows were so big when I was a kid. Blankety Blank
Yeah,
or
like
what's it called, Price is Right and stuff like this was so big.
what was the one with Michael Barrymore and it had like 3
the
rows
TVs.
of TVs? What the hell was that called?
Yeah, I know exactly what. All right.
Strike It Lucky.
Strike It Lucky.
Strike It Lucky.
Yeah, you got it.
That were mad. That were proper 80s.
Really good.
Oh, what was the one with like Supermarket Sweep?
Yeah, Dale Winton. Yeah, of course.
Dale Winton.
The massive banana.
Let's explain a little because people might not have a clue what we're on about. There's a TV show in England that was on about 10 a.m. in the morning. So if you were off school, you'd put on TV and it'd be there. And the idea is 3 contestants or teams. I think there were 2 people in each team. Yeah, and they played, it's like a quiz, and then that got them some time. And then it's set in a supermarket, and they had to get points by getting certain items. Like, okay, you've got 2 minutes, and you need to go into the supermarket, and you need to find some potted ham, some radishes, and a 1974 copy of The Times. Or something, really random that they had to go and find in their allotted time. Mate, it's like a fever dream.
It's so good. That. Oh, I love it. And the last round is like you have to fill your trolley up with as much stuff as you can, and the person with the biggest price at the end, the highest price at the end, is the winner. I loved it, man. That's so good.
Yeah, and they only got so much time depending on how many questions they got
answered.
Right.
Yeah. But I think they also had to go around and pick up specific items as well, like you said. So
yeah, like bonus items or something. Oh, it's like, honestly, talking about it, if you hadn't seen it for yourself, you'd be like, what? Is this real?
Yeah. It's so good, honestly. It's so good.
But there you go. I'm sure it exists on YouTube. I'm sure it does.
Yeah, it must be.
I like the fact we started, who's your favourite entertainer, and we're talking about terrible 90s TV game shows.
They were there. That's where you get the best TV shows from. That's why. But you did say that you're not really a movie guy as well, yeah. So I got to ask you an important question. What movie have you not watched, sorry, that everyone says it's like a top tier, you must. If you haven't watched it, you are just a loser if you haven't watched it, kind of. Because so many people are so passionate about some of these movies,
Everything that people like heralds, like, this is an all-time great movie, I've probably not seen. Shawshank Redemption, not bothered.
Really? I've seen that, at least, yeah.
Citizen Kane, everyone says best film ever made, not bothered. Not bothered at all.
Have you seen Godfather? I haven't seen Godfather.
I've not seen Godfather. Yeah. Like, unless it's got, Adam Sandler in it. I'm not bothered.
So many people out there like, you haven't seen Godfather, but you've watched Adam Sandler? Yeah, no, they're going to be killing us for that.
Let's move on a little bit in terms of musicians then. I mean, we always seem to get back to music somehow, but I distinctly remember you telling me that your favourite artists were Robbie Williams.
I didn't say he's my favourite. I said he's one of my favourites. One of my favourites.
Don't backtrack.
No, I wouldn't dare do such a thing. That's an awful thing. I like Robbie Williams and take that. I'm not going to deny that. I wear that as a badge of honour on my chest. So no worries about that one. But no, I think in terms of musicians, obviously, people who entertain you. You get it? He jumped it in there. No one gets that. Sorry, guys. It's a Robbie Williams song. Obviously, Queen, you can't get better than really Freddie Mercury, can you? Like, as an entertainer, I mean, blimey. Michael Jackson. I really liked Michael Jackson before I don't even know what year. I feel like I was in university when all of that happened, but I really was interested because his style was amazing. You know, he was a very good entertainer, but obviously there's questions about that guy.
Man, I wondered where you were going when you said before. I was like, before what? There's so many different things you could have said.
Yeah, but you get
It could have caused trouble.
Before the ending, I think was probably the. I always remember, and I literally shuddered when he had his baby and he put it out the window above the crowd. I was like, oh my God, it literally sent chills up my spine. Yeah.
It must be hard living in spotlight like him, because the greats of the time, Elvis and Michael Jackson, they must live such a weird life that you're so skewed on what's normal, and like the social development must be really all over the place. So yeah, he was a character. I'll give him that.
I think he's an interesting guy. I think his music's good, isn't it? So right.
Sure.
But that doesn't disregard from the person, We're not saying that, but
I think sometimes it's really hard to distinguish the art from the person. It's one of the most heartbreaking things when you absolutely love something like a band or a movie or something, and the person behind it is a terrible person or does something horrendous, and you're just like, oh, but I loved that, but now I'm kind of conflicted. The one that always seems to come up is J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people, I've got a lot of friends who are like LGBTQ, whatever, and they love Harry Potter but hate J.K. Rowling because of her stance on like trans issues and stuff, and that is really hard for a lot of people to deal with, that, like the separation of the person and the art.
Yeah, so. I agree. It's a challenge. When you're in the limelight, I suppose, and then you have certain views, and how you manage that is quite difficult, I assume, especially if you have quite strong views, like some people have what we would consider nowadays strong views anyway. There's two that jump to mind really quickly in the kind of like, where do you separate the art from the person? I was at university in Wales, and I was going through a town called Pontypridd, which is maybe 30 miles from Cardiff. And it's specifically, the band is from the area. And then I hear on the news that the singer does something awful. And I'm like, I grew up with this band, the Lost Prophets. I grew up with this band.
Yeah, I supported them back in the day.
I
like,
grew
my
up
band
with them.
played with them.
Oh, you mean support as in your band?
Like, my bands were played on the same thing as them back in the day.
That really shocked me because I loved everything they did. And now I'm like, conflicted whenever I want to, you get urges with music. For me, I do. I get urges. I'm like, I really want to listen to this now, but I'm like, can I? Like, I really am conflicted because I feel like I'm then supporting something which is awful, and then it's just one guy as well, and now
out of a band,
and now the band has been tarred with the same brush. So that's really awful.
It's difficult, that one, isn't it? Like with a band of 4 or 5 people, and one person does something terrible, and the whole band is considered to have done the terrible thing.
100%.
Yeah, I definitely remember that. Lost Prophets, and that was a tough one.
Yeah, we've gone down a dark route here, unfortunately.
Anyway, let's make it a bit more entertaining.
Yeah.
In terms of then, we both love wrestling. We don't hide it.
No.
Stu, who is your favourite wrestler of all time?
Obviously, The Rock. I mean, you couldn't go past that guy at all, for everything he went through during it as well.
He was on another level.
Yeah, he was like crazy good. I really loved Al Snow. He was like one of my favourites, honestly. People who don't know wrestling don't know what we're talking about, but it's the most bizarre character. Like, not Goldust bizarre, but he was very random, great wrestler as well. So
yeah, Al Snow was pretty funny, man. Like his theme song would come up, be like, "What does everybody want?"
Yeah, yeah, guys. These days, you probably don't know. Probably are going to misunderstand that he had a literal mannequin head that he walked to the ring with. So,
yeah. Well, that was the double entendre, wasn't it? Like, that was the whole point of it. But yeah, Al Snow was class. That era, there
was so many.
I was big into like Stone Cold and The Rock, and I always loved Triple H. I was a big Triple H fan. But I'm always like I always loved the heels, if you like. Heel is a word for the bad guy in wrestling. You have the good guy who is a face and the bad guy who is a heel. And I always like the bad guys, always. Undertaker as well. Like when I was a kid, I loved Undertaker.
Was there anyone that you was like an underdog that you really were gunning for? Not recent period, in that period of time, because there were so many good wrestlers that couldn't breach, the top tier.
That's a good question. I always really buzzed on the Hurricane. He was a little bit later.
A bit later than Attitude Era, but yeah, he's good.
Yeah. At the time, it was like so entertaining, but you look back now and it's like, ooh, that's a bit much. But it's funny, like some stuff does that and some stuff doesn't, and the stuff that doesn't gets left behind, so there you go.
100%.
Still, what's the question for the people? I didn't give you a question.
Who is the most entertaining celebrity for you? Could be musician, sports star, could be a wrestler if you're really inclined. It's up to you. I'm excited to read
Nice one. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you again next week.
Speak to you soon. Ciao, ciao.